Welcome back, everybody. It's JB and I'm here to host another Zeal Cigar review, and today we're going to be talking about the fact that there used to be 42,000 cigar factories in the United States, and 300 of those were in the factory of sadness, one of my stomping grounds, Cleveland. Now, with that being said, I can honestly say, going through the streets of Cleveland, I've never seen a cigar factory in Cleveland. So the fact that there used to be 300 at one point around the 1800s, late 1800s, is just mind-blowing to me. And it's really interesting because out of all of those alleged 42,000 cigar factories that were all over the US, both small and big, there's not a ton of them left. And most of the cigar factories that are listed as US cigar factories are like shops with one or two rollers there that roll the cigars on site. But there are a few cigar factories that still are operational here in the US and roll cigars that they sell, mainstream brands. And we'll talk about those 4 factories that I found that still roll cigars here in the US, all next on the Zeal Cigar Review. So, I don't have any cigars. Well, that's not true. I might have some of the Don Pepins, but I don't have a lot of cigars on hand at the moment that are considered American rolled. I do, however, have a Yeti Tracker Connecticut in my hand in a Gordo size 6x60. This cigar is made by one of these American companies, but it is not rolled at the American factory. I want to talk about the 4 factories that I found that still make cigars that you can get that are rolled here in the United States. They're not necessarily made with US tobacco, but I'm going to go through the 4 US factories that still roll cigars here in the US that you can get and try and smoke. And while we do that, I'm going to go through this Yeti Tracker Connecticut. You guys know I'm not an extremely large Connecticut fan. I do remember liking the Yeti Tracker Connecticut, so we're going to get back into this one. But you know what we got to do in order to find out what it tastes like. We gotta
cut, light, and
smoke. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of US cigar companies, but there's not a lot of them that have factories located here in the US. So that's what made this video really unique for me to want to make, is there's a lot of factories and a lot of cigars that I didn't even know were actually rolled at a US factory. So before we get into those though, at first light, Yeti Tracker Connecticut, very pleasant. It's not boring, it's not plain. It's got a little bit of spice to it, a little bit of wood. I'm interested to see where this gets into. I wouldn't normally pick up a Gordo Connecticut because I don't want to smoke a Connecticut for that long, but we'll see how this turns out. One of the oldest still standing cigar factories is one of the most well-known cigar factories, and that's the JC Newman cigar factory in Tampa. That's been around since I think like 1953. They do still roll a lot of cigars at that factory, and I think there's 2 brands that they still use that are rolled with the old machines that they still have at the JC Newman factory. And I think that's called it's like the Rigoleta Black and the Blackjacks, and then the other one was the Mexican Segundos. I'm messing this all up. Those 2 are cigars that are still made at the JC Newman factory here in the United States, as well as the American. The American is a Florida-grown wrapper that they roll in the JC Newman factory in Tampa. So JC Newman, still one of the companies out there that makes cigars that are rolled here in the United States. And if you're one of those people that's like, man, I want a cigar that's rolled by a US factory in the US, the American, definitely an option from JC Newman. I'm sure they roll some other cigars at that factory. That's what I could find. But yeah, number 1, JC Newman. Before we get into any more of these, I'm going to get into this a little bit more. It's going to take me a little bit to get through this Gordo because I don't smoke as fast as other people do. Typically with Connecticut's, I usually go with a Robusto. And I usually smoke them a lot slower than I would a normal cigar. So like a Spice Cream, for example, I typically smoke in a box press Robusto, and I will gladly take an hour or more to smoke that Robusto. It's just way more pleasant, way more smooth and creamy when you let them kind of cool off and you don't burn those Connecticut's too hot. For me, that's been my experience. I like to burn the Connecticut's a lot slower, take my time with them, not get them as hot, and for me, they keep that creamy sweetness and what I look for in a Connecticut a lot longer. very good right now. A little bit of wood, a little bit of white pepper, some sweetness, fairly pleasant. Definitely something that off first light that I would say that I enjoy. I'm excited to get into it a little bit more, so I'm gonna smoke it down a little bit, and then we'll get into the second U.S. cigar factory that still rolls cigars here in the U.S. Guys, I gotta be honest. This is really freaking good. God. So I said I was gonna smoke this slow. That is not what's happening right now. It's literally so tasty. I probably have a cone. Oh yeah. There's definitely a cone. It's just tasty. I can't stop smoking it. There's a reason this cigar was nicknamed the glazed donut, and the Maduro version is nicknamed the chocolate donut. There's a very premium creaminess that you get off of this cigar that is just super delightful. A little bit of spice, maybe even like hints of like a light cinnamon. A little bit of earthy, like nuttiness. I feel like more recently than anything, because I've been smoking things I don't smoke on a regular basis, just to kind of give you guys reviews on things that I don't normally smoke a lot. And every single time I'm mad at myself because I don't smoke the cigar a little more often. This is really good. I smoke the Maduro a lot, and I smoke the Sun-Grown from time to time. But this Connecticut is so good. I don't know why the Robusto is not a regular rotation for me as a morning smoke. Look, I'm under the impression that there's just too many cigars out there to remember that everything tastes good. And it's always a pleasant surprise when you go back to something you haven't had in a while and it's still just as good or better than you remember it being. The second U.S. cigar factory that still rolls cigars in the U.S., El Rey de los Habanos, which I believe means King of the Cuban Cigars, if I remember correctly. This factory is Don Pepin's factory. This is some stuff from my father, some Tatuaje. I believe they do the Don Pepin line there, and I can't remember which Tatuajes they roll there. That's been a factory in the U.S. since '03, and since 2003, it's one of the smallest factories that makes cigars, but it's also one of the highest rated. Don Pepin makes some of the best cigars. My father, Tatuaje. I mean, they're incredible blended cigars. If you haven't had any of their cigars, you should definitely smoke them and try the Don Pepin line. I think there's a white label, a blue label, and then there's like an original Cuban label. All three of those, very good. Well, guys, before I give you the last two, I'm gonna get down into the second third, close to the final third on this a little bit, and then we'll come back and talk about the last two US-based cigar factories. All right, guys, so we're back here at the nub of the Yeti Tracker Connecticut Gordo, and very good cigar. Stays really consistent pretty much through the whole thing. Towards the end, though, it does get a little bit more earthy, rich, and bitter. But all the way up to the nub, it's very sweet, really good, lots of flavor. Really impressed with the Connecticut. But I got two more factories that are here in the US that roll cigars here in the United States that you guys might be interested in. So let's go through those real quick. Number 3 is El Titan de Bronze. You've probably heard of them because they do a couple things for Drew Estates, like the Miami was rolled at El Titan. I believe they also roll a couple things for Cohiba, like the Miami from Cohiba. I think they also do a couple cigars for Warped La Palina. I think La Palina has the Goldie and the Family Miami are the two cigars that are rolled here in the US for La Palina. I think they also might do some stuff for La Gloria Cubano and Partagas. I'm not sure which cigars, but I do know that those are some of the cigars that they manufacture and roll here in the U.S. at El Titan. And the last and final one that I could find that was worthy of mention was Aganorsa Leaf. That's a pretty popular brand, I would say. They've been coming up pretty heavy over the last probably like 5 or 6 years, I would say. I've seen a lot of Aganorsa, and they make really good cigars, I would say. I've enjoyed most of the Aganorsas I've smoked, especially the Corojo. Very, very good cigars. The only ones that I could find that they rolled there, though, were the Aniversarios. Now, most of those guys also have factories in Nicaragua or the DR, mostly Nicaragua. So it's always interesting to know that there's still some stuff rolled here in the U.S. if you guys are, you know, getting that itch to support something rolled here in the U.S. or even a U.S.-based company. So gotta go help some folks and see a man about some tobacs. And with that, guys, I'm out of here like last year. Peace.